Yo, what is going on, everybody? So if you haven't seen my other video from today about Dr. Dre and Nicole Young, go and check that out first because that's a quick 15-minute one. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I was really in the groove on that, so you know it's going to be good. But today, right now, I wanted to talk about something very, very close to my heart: getting rid of feminists out of Australian politics. Now, love her or hate her, she's been a long-time advocate for men, speaking out against feminism in Australia. And she has today released an article. Now, guys, I want you to stick with me here because I want to show you how everything links together. Let me share this with you. Pauline Hanson, Queensland Senator, time for a minister for men. And by the way, out of I think it's a possible 93 seats standing in the Queensland election on October 31, there are 90 One Nation candidates. So potentially we could have something that looks a lot like this all across Queensland, just a sea of orange in the way that I predict November 3rd is going to be a sea of red in the US. But I digress. Let me read. I'm going to skip some paragraphs in this. I'm going to read some paragraphs to you. Despite the challenges of COVID-19, One Nation's family law inquiry has continued with weekly evidence heard by the Joint Standing Committee. The inquiry has attracted a record number of submissions from the public, and following more than 6 months of evidence from individuals and organizations, I'm of the firm view that it's time that the federal government appointed a minister for men. For the feminists reading this, I'll give you a moment to grab a bucket and a bottle of mouthwash. Political parties have long called for equality across both genders, but only a minister for women exists across all levels of government. So you've got federal, state, and local. Federal government's Minister for Women works across government to deliver policies and programs to advance the lives of women. As we focus on strengthening women's economic security, their involvement in leadership positions, and ensure that women and their children are safe from violence, the plight of Australian boys and men is on the decline. I'm going to talk about statistics of how men are actually disproportionately disadvantaged in several areas compared to women. And she says, as a mother of 3 boys and 1 girl, this raises significant concern for my own children, let alone my young grandchildren. If we truly want equality in society, it's time to drop the hardline feminist attack on men and start treating each other with the same level of support based on need. Bravo. I completely 100% agree. And I really see a pushback against this kind of feminist attempt to control men and control society. Now, some people have a bit of an issue with her stance on gun rights. And look, I'm not a gun owner, so that doesn't personally affect me. That's not to say that I don't care about it. I would say that if I was a gun owner and if it was the difference between more strict gun rights and getting rid of feminism, personally for me, I'd be prepared to hand in all my guns to get rid of feminism from Australian politics because we need fathers to have a say back. Hammerhand is in the house, says, watching on the way home. Home, what's good, men? Hammerhand, Pauline Hanson has just said, if we truly want equality in society, it's time to drop the hardline feminist attack on men and start treating each other with the same level of support based on need. She is advocating for a minister for men because currently we don't have one. So let me move on to this because this is an executive order that was signed on the 22nd of September. So only a few weeks back now. In September, what an appropriate month for that to happen in. Executive order from the White House on combating race and sex stereotyping. Thanks to the courage and sacrifice of our forebears, America has made significant progress towards realization of our national creed, particularly in the 57 years since Dr. Martin Luther King shared his dream with the country. Today, however, many people are pushing a different vision of America that is grounded in hierarchies based on collective social and political identities rather than in the inherent and equal dignity of each person as an individual. And for anyone who's wondering what that particular ideological stance is, it's a Marxist stance where everyone, their identity is rooted in collectivism rather than in individualism. So This ideology is rooted in the pernicious and false belief that America is an irredeemably racist and sexist country, that some people, simply on account of their race or sex, are oppressors, and that racial and sexual identities are more important than our common status as human beings and as Americans. I'm on board with this so far. This destructive ideology is grounded in misrepresentations of our country's history and its role in the world. Although presented as new and revolutionary, they resurrect the discredited notions of the 19th century's apologists for slavery who, like President Lincoln's rival Stephen A. Douglas, maintained that our government was made on the white basis by white men for the benefit of white men. Our founding documents rejected these racialized views of America, which were soundly defeated on the bloodstained battlefields of the Civil War. Yet they are now being repackaged and sold as cutting-edge insights. They are designed to divide us and prevent us from uniting as one people in pursuit of one common destiny for our great country. I totally agree. Unfortunately, this malign ideology is now migrating from the fringes of American society and threatens to infect core institutions of our country. Instructors and materials teaching that men and members of certain races, as well as our most venerable institutions, are inherently sexist and racist, are appearing in workplace diversity trainings across the country, even in components of the federal government and among federal contractors. For example, the Department of, I was almost about to say the Department of White People, the Department of Treasury recently held a seminar that promoted arguments that, and I quote, virtually all white people, regardless of how woke they are, contribute to racism. It's not true, of course. And that instructed small group leaders to encourage employees to avoid narratives that Americans should be more colorblind or let people's skills and personalities be what differentiates them. So the Department of the Treasury held a seminar that basically said, focus on race. Don't not focus on race. And also, is racist to hire based on skill and personality and their differentiating factors rather than their race. So we need to focus exclusively on race and demographic with our hiring decisions. Nothing else matters. That's what they basically said. And then I moved to the next executive order promoting free speech and religious liberty. This was on the 4th of May, 2017, not even 6 months after President Trump was inaugurated. Now, where was it that he said here? There was a particular thing that he said, and it was basically promoting free speech on campuses and just in general. And I think there were some universities that had to sort of backpedal a bit on that basis because, you know, when you are breaching executive orders, you don't tend to get government funding. And, you know, government funding is a lot of money, generally speaking, with big institutions. And, you know, if we do get a minister for men, I don't think anyone's going to stand for it being run by women. We're going to get such an uproar if feminists try to run that they're not even going to believe it. Now, guys, this is why I personally think that the feminist movement is starting to collapse into itself and collide with itself. This is why people aren't taking it seriously anymore. I believe that they are starting to lose traction. They're starting to lose ground. They're starting to lose momentum. I'm going to share with you a couple of super quick snippets of videos that are giving all different conflicting insights on what feminism actually is. So let me start with this one from good old Clem Dog Ford.
Distraction. And feminism is not about men, and feminism is certainly not about hating men. But when I say that it's not about hating men, I don't mean in that reassuring way, like, don't worry about it. Feminism's not really about hating men. We're not threatening to you. I mean, feminism's not.
Okay, so you get the picture from that one there. Let's move on to the next one. Now, Emma Watson. This is a very interesting one. Listen to what she says about the United Nations.
I was appointed as Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women 6 months ago.
For UN Women. Take note of that. United Nations Women.
People know you for he for she,
yes.
The United Nations Solidarity Movement bringing.
So he for she, that hashtag he for she, that was a United Nations push to push feminist ideology on everyone.
Men into feminism. What's the latest
Wait.
solidarity movement bringing men into feminism? What's the latest with that
Just listen
program?
once more.
People know you for he for she.
Yeah.
People know you for he for she.
Yes.
The United Nations solidarity movement bringing men into feminism.
United Nations solidarity movement bringing men into feminism. Interesting. Now, this was a photo that I found in my screenshots when I was going through deleting some old photos to make room on my phone the other day because I archive a lot of stuff. Richard says, that's so weird. I thought feminism was supposed to be about equality. Thanks for clarifying. Gabrielle Sparks, no, it's about rights for women of all kinds. Y'all can fuck off. That's exactly what feminism's about. That is exactly to the letter what it is about. Clementine Ford said it. Gabrielle said it. Numerous other feminists have said it. I'm going to share another prominent feminist that precedes Clementine Ford, that precedes Gabrielle, precedes most of the outwardly spoken feminists that are talking out at the moment trying to promote it. But I'll get to that. So back to what we were saying about the United Nations and he for she and Emma Watson being heavily involved in that and them trying to push men into the feminist movement. Will that be the same United Nations which says every leader needs to adopt a feminist agenda, just like every one of us? My feminist agenda, generation equality. Would that be the same UN Women that says RIP patriarchy? Would that be the same UN Women that says real change, enduring change happens one step at a time, promoting a very outspoken feminist who's now no longer with us, Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Same UN that says, don't forget your mask, hand sanitizer, and your determination to smash the patriarchy. Don't forget that. Would that be the same United Nations Women who says it's okay for guys to share the work, share the care, do domestic work, defy the patriarchy, be feminist, stand up for women, while at the same time, women won't stand up for men, women won't be men's rights advocates, women won't defy female privilege, women won't, if they're the ones staying at home, they're told by other feminists, hey, you don't need to stay at home and do all this work. Your husband needs to help out around the house. So is it okay for women to do domestic work? Because that's not the message that I've been hearing lately. Is it okay for guys to cry? Well, we know it's okay for women to cry because they cry all the time. But this is the thing, and I spoke about this in another video that I did. Men cry. Men cry when they are emotionally overwhelmed. Men cry when they are deliriously happy, right? How many of those videos have you seen where, the kids have gotten together and bought their dad the car that he's always wanted, but never gone and got because he'd always sacrificed for his kids to help them out and get them ahead, always put himself last, We've seen guys cry on TV. We've seen guys cry all the time. But they cry for all the right reasons. They don't cry because someone said, oh, those jeans look a bit average on you. You don't look that great in those jeans. We don't cry because, we didn't get our way with the decor at home. We don't cry about that. We're just like, it's easier not to argue. Just deal with it, right? We guys deal with it all the time. We capitulate to women all the time. We need to stop doing that. And then we have, this is the shit test of the century, all of this crap. And when feminism ends, I will cry tears of joy too. There are no shortcuts, and there are no shortcuts in life. And I really appreciate that is in fact your YouTube name. I do appreciate that. Would it be the same UN Women that promotes Gloria Steinem as saying a feminist is anyone who recognizes the equality and full humanity of women and men? Same Gloria Steinem that is celebrated by Planned Parenthood. The same Gloria Steinem that said black women invented feminism. That is actually complete and utter horseshit, because that never happened. That never happened. I can tell you that factually. Black women did not invent feminism. In fact, not only did black women not invent feminism, but black women were excluded from feminism. And if you don't believe me, go and have a look at Whoopi Goldberg telling us that they were excluded from feminism.
I have never been a feminist because when coming up, there was no room for us
Black women.
in the movement. Yeah. For Black women, they weren't talking to us because, you know, you'd see these women, they're talking about burning my bra and doing it. My mother had one bra. She wasn't burning. Yeah. You know what I mean? She wasn't one to do.
And if you don't believe what I'm saying, you guys, you really need to go check out the video by Studio Brûlé, which I'll also put in the links in the description. I've got a ton of links to all of these tabs, so you can check them all out for yourself. The Birth of Feminism at Seneca Falls by Studio Brûlé. It's about an hour long. If you really want to understand the history of feminism, and it's really, really important to understand the history of feminism, if you want to understand what's going on right now, go back and check it out. Feminism was exclusive of Black people. It was exclusive of women that didn't fit the mold, right? They basically excluded women who weren't sort of upper class privileged white women. So like, I mean, like, how can you possibly go ahead and say that Black women invented feminism when Black women were specifically excluded from feminism? It was not an inclusive movement. This is all lies by one of the biggest leaders of the feminist movement. Gloria Steinem said, we also must fight for transgender rights. She said, I believe that transgender people are living out real, authentic lives. Those lives should be celebrated, not questioned. Let me go to something else that I found about that.
Debate, and what we're losing is literally the word woman to mean adult human female.
But people seem to be embracing the word woman as well. You're saying that it's disappearing. I think that that's not entirely the case. I mean, I think women are being very much embraced at the moment as well. We're very much in the news. Women are taking over very high positions of power. Do you not agree?
Women are taking over very high positions of power. Remember those words, because that will be very relevant very shortly. Women taking over high positions of power, because this is what they're after. They are after power. They are after control. They are after the top plum jobs. This is not about equality.
That females are being celebrated.
Well, you say female and woman interchangeably, and I would agree with you, but that is...
I'm going to skip that. But I've made my point there, right? And she was actually speaking out against the declassification, basically men who identify as women being included as women, because that kind of takes away from what women fundamentally are. By the way, thank you very much to Dukus. Says a woman cries and she is brave and strong. A man cries and he's a weak F that needs to toughen up. That's right. And it's usually women that are saying that to the men as well. So, you know, a lot of this talk about toxic masculinity, feminists love to say, men tell other men they're not allowed to cry. If men just cried, then they'd get rid of their toxic masculinity and they'd stop being so violent and lashing out at women. Like, no, it's women that tell us we're not allowed to cry. It's women that shame us for crying. So it's just learned behavior. And thank God we've got testosterone. If we didn't have testosterone, we'd break down crying and then women would be like, oh, God, look at that guy. Right? Never. And I got to tell you, when I was younger, there were a couple of times I was in a relationship and she'd break up with me, and then I would cry and send her a photo of me crying, hoping for her to, on some subconscious level, hoping that she would have pity on me, but it never happened. And then when I actually found the red pill and I found men going their own way and I found the manosphere and I started to listen about female psychology, I was like, everything makes sense now. And now I realize exactly why my attempts to get those girls back completely failed miserably. Guys, never cry in front of a woman, because when you cry, you're being vulnerable. And when you're being vulnerable, well, then your defenses are weakened, right? They know your weak spot now, so they can use that against you if they ever want to turn against you. And if you want to put yourself in that position, you want to be vulnerable and you want to potentially put yourself at risk, be my guest. Be my guest. Go do it. Go for your life. Just don't come complaining to me when everything falls down around you and women don't respect you anymore. So yeah, don't allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of people that can use that vulnerability against you. That's what I would say. So let's continue on to this woman here. And I agree with her. And even though she's a feminist, I agree with her on this point.
So you said something that I think many people would in their hearts think is obvious, but very few people are willing to say out loud. You said it knowing you would likely be punished for saying it, but you said it anyway. She said it knowing that she would likely be punished for saying it. I thought,
don't feminists advocate for listening to all women, for hearing women's voices, for allowing women to be free to do and say and think what they want? Oh, apparently not when it opposes the feminist storyline.
Anyway, why did you do that?
I believe in the truth. I believe that people should have these conversations and say things.
So this chick, Julia Beck, she was kicked off the Baltimore LGBT community, a Democrat-run city, by the way. Hope Kim Klacik wins that seat. And she says, I'm the most hated lesbian in Baltimore due to my views on trans debate.
Things that matter without fear of punishment.
You are.
Yeah, she should be able to say things that matter. She should be able to say the truth without fear of punishment. But that's not what happens in the feminist movement. If you dissent, you're out.
Old-fashioned. Why do you think, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm grateful that you have that attitude, but why do you think it was important to say this specifically?
See, some gay people see a problem with trans in female-only spaces. I think that's also not such a great idea.
Well, when we get down to it, women and girls all share a biological reality. We are all
Oh, that's hate speech. Hate speech. Women and girls have a biological reality, which is titties, vaginas, and uterus.
female. But if any male person can call himself a woman or legally identify as female, then predatory men will do so in order to gain.
Predatory men who want to use that particular loophole to their advantage will do so. Just to be clear, it is not men that are predatory. It is predatory men that are predatory.
Access to women's single-sex spaces, and this puts.
Just like if women could identify as men and they were predatory, they could gain access to men's only spaces.
Every woman and girl at risk.
That's from the beginning. I don't weigh in on this often because sexual politics.
So anyway, that's that. I don't want to get too much into this. And for any of you who haven't seen it, this was what I was mentioning about Studio Brûlée, the birth of feminism at Seneca Falls, 1848. Did you actually know that feminism goes back as far as 1848? 1848. That's 170 years ago. That's how long feminism has been seeping into our culture. And this is the truth about what feminism is really about.
But men have to recognize that the first step in being a feminist ally is relinquishing some of their power, because ultimately feminism is about taking that power away from men.
So feminism is not about hating men, but if the shoe fits, also feminism is not about men. Feminism is not about men, it's about women's rights, and it's about taking power away from men. And people like Emma Watson want us to get on board with feminism. Get fucked, Emma Watson. Now, at the moment, we've got a family law inquiry going on in Australia. They were expecting to get roughly about maximum 200 submissions to this family law inquiry from men and fathers and, aggrieved mothers that have also been on the receiving end of male legislation that was designed to be anti-male but has actually been used against them. By the way, thank you to Shark Dentures. He says tears elicit sympathy in men, disgust in women. That is sadly overwhelmingly true. And thank you for the bumper sticker, for the super sticker from Brakir. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for that super chat there. Now, this family law inquiry, it has garnered so much opposition from leftist politicians like Larissa Waters, like Sherelle Moody, the one who said that firefighters go home and beat up their wives, from people like Rosie Batty, who claims that women are always the victims, even though her own son was the victim. Right? They can't see this. Remember when Cassie J went on Sunrise and they were talking about how, women are the victims, and Rosie Batty, her son was killed, and she's like, Cassie J's like, wait a minute, so it was her son that passed away, you said, that was killed? Like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's interesting because that shows that men are victims too. Then that little snake Waleed Ali was like, so that's what you took away from that? It's like, yeah, because the man was the victim. Like the kid died. The kid with the penis. Yeah, he died. He died. So Dukos says, ever notice these commies use the word ally, never friend, and they backstab their allies as soon as it's politically convenient, i.e. J.K. Rowling. Spot on, Dukos. Dukus, sorry. That is exactly right. That is 100% correct. Now, let me get back to this family law inquiry because we operate off the Duluth model in Australia. And for those of you who don't know what the Duluth model is, it is basically a model that predicates that everything that hurts a woman's feelings, everything that upsets a woman is based off male privilege. I know this is a very deeply oversimplified explanation, but basically every bad thing in a relationship, a woman is the victim of, and it's always fundamentally because of male privilege, male entitlement, and male power and control. And this model was developed in 1981 by a group of women's rights activists who were actually pretty insane, if I may be honest. And I just don't think that they should be allowed to walk the streets in public because they are freaking nut jobs. I'm going to show you very quickly what the Duluth model looks like. I'm not even going to go through it all, but you guys will be able to see the 8 different segments in it so you can get a feel for exactly what it is. Let me just bring that up here. There we go. Using coercion and threats, using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, using children, minimizing, denying, and blaming, using economic abuse, and using male privilege. So if you don't let her buy that expensive purse that she wanted with the rent money, that's economic abuse. If you make her afraid by looking at her a certain way and she feels afraid, that's intimidation. If you make her feel bad about herself, maybe by telling, maybe she might say to you, hey, do I look fat in these jeans? And you're like, do you want my honest answer? And she'll be like, yeah, of course I want your honest answer. You kind of look a little bit frumpy in those jeans. So that other pair of jeans makes you look better. That's making her feel bad about herself. That's emotional abuse under family law in Australia. Controlling who she talks to. Oh, geez, how many guys can remember having a girlfriend at some stage in their life saying, I don't want you talking to her. I don't want you hanging around with him. That's using isolation. That's family violence. Guys, if read this, familiarize yourselves from this wheel. It's at the duluthmodel.org. Click on wheels, download wheels, power and quality, I think it is, and power and control, sorry, and look through this. And if you're in a relationship where you can see it going downhill and you can see any of these things, look at your state legislation in terms of what the police consider family violence on the police website. Go to the police and say, these are the behaviors. Here's a record of them all. Keep a diary, everything. Don't keep it in the house because she'll find it. And then she'll get to it first, and then you will be out of your own house. But yeah, anyway, utilize that to the best of your advantage, guys, because they're using it to their advantage, and you should not be putting up with any of the shit that is in this circle. But because of the Duluth model, women have essentially been allowed to run riots. Where they choose to, they've been allowed to essentially run riot and do whatever they want with there's no allegation. There's no allegations they can be punished for under family law. Ryan Lincoln Gaming says, honestly, you saved my life. I was very close to taking it earlier this year after a sexual allegation made me lose a lot of clients and to spend thousands in legal fees. Going to therapy. Thanks, man. Hey, Ryan, send me an email, man. Reach out to me. Like, if you want to have a chat to me and you think it's going to be more effective than therapy, like, let's work something out, because I think that there's probably a lot that I could bring to the table that maybe a clinical therapist might not, because they're operating off a very rigid framework. So I'd be willing to have a chat with you and help you out maybe some more. I'm really glad I've been able to assist you in that way. So the parliamentary inquiry, I'm going to share with you a couple of the submissions from the parliamentary inquiry. And one of them was from the Feminist Legal Clinic, right? And they say here, not only are domestic violence and child sexual abuse very largely committed by men, but they are also notoriously difficult to prove and to prosecute. So victims often have no evidence of convictions to sway family law proceedings in their favor. This is a systemic problem. To offset this difficulty, there needs to be an acknowledgement that mothers are generally best placed to keep children safe and to determine their best interests, unless there is strong evidence to the contrary. Mothers also need to have independent access to adequate financial support while engaging in parenting and should not be reliant upon extracting the support from an abusive man. There's so much to unpack there. So I'm just going to unpack that for a second. Let's just let's just have a look. So domestic violence and child sexual abuse very largely committed by men. That's what the stats say because the Duluth model won't allow things to be recorded in a proper way. I'll just check my email here. But yeah, because of the Duluth model, abuse against men and children by women doesn't tend to be recorded. And it doesn't tend to be recorded because the police have been trained in the Duluth model. I'm not joking. You know what? Once I share these two submissions from the Family Law Inquiry, and this is just two of heaps from different women, two of heaps. From all of the women's groups, from all of the feminist groups. Hang on, dude, get back on your pillow. Sorry, this my little pal, he just keeps getting in my space when I'm streaming, so I'm just gonna shuffle him over onto his pillow. Johnny Vegas says, just felt the need to say thank you from that last super chat you read. Brother from America, I appreciate that, Johnny. And Brakia says, I was blocked by a music YouTuber for giving them frequent super chats. I don't understand why though. Sorry for interrupting. I will never block you for giving me frequent super chats, Brakia. I appreciate you sharing. That's crazy the way some people are. Anyway, let's get back to this, to unpacking this, because this is really important. So because the Duluth model's in place, it's almost impossible to get a conviction of a woman for abuse against a child or a man. Marie says, worked in government assistance, thinking mothers are going to be the best is beyond false. These women popped out babies just to keep assistance coming in. That's right. That's what's happening in Australia, unfortunately, far too often than not. Here we go. So victims often have no evidence of conviction to sway family law proceedings. So apparently domestic violence and child abuse is very largely committed, but also difficult to prove and to prosecute. So if it hasn't been proven and prosecuted, then how can it be stats to show that it's very largely committed? So it seems to be a little bit counterintuitive there. So victims often have no evidence of convictions to sway family law proceedings in their favor. This is a systemic problem. So listen to that. It is a systemic problem, in the words of the Feminist Legal Clinic, that victims don't have enough evidence of convictions to sway family law proceedings in their favor. This is all about swaying legal proceedings in the favor of feminists and in favor of women. This is not about anything else. So this is about power and control over. It's about taking power and control in their own lives, in their own autonomy, in their own lives, rights over their kids, but taking it away from men, as Julie Bindel said before in that video I showed you. Next paragraph. To offset this difficulty, there needs to be an acknowledgement that mothers are generally best placed to keep children safe and to determine their best interests. I thought feminists wanted to get rid of these patriarchal stereotypes that women are the best primary caregiver. I thought feminists want to get rid of that. Oh, they want to get rid of it only when they're trying to support their premise that patriarchy exists. They don't want to get rid of it when it means that they might not have as many legal rights as men. Or, sorry, they don't want to get rid of it when it means they might be on the same playing field as men. Right? They want to grip onto that particular premise when it gives them privileges over men. But when they're trying to argue that patriarchy exists, they want to pretend like it's the patriarchy. This is how they use and manipulate things. Mothers also need to have independent access to adequate financial support while engaged in parenting, and should not be reliant upon extracting this support from an abusive man. So there's two things there. She's basically painting the picture that men who are separated that are providing child support are abusive. And she's also saying she doesn't want to have to rely on the man. She wants to rely on the government, because government pays every week like clockwork, or every fortnight. Government pays like clockwork. Some men don't. Sometimes it's because they can't. Sometimes it's because they're sick of paying ridiculous amounts that they shouldn't have to pay. Now, guys, there is a ton of different feminist organizations that have put forward submissions to the Family Law Inquiry. These are just two of it. Here we go. The National Council of Single Mothers and Their Children. Give me a break. Here's their first recommendations. Our recommendations. Number one, The removal of the presumption of equal shared parental responsibility to ensure that children's safety is central and granted primacy when determining parenting arrangements. The removal of the presumption of equal shared parental responsibility to eliminate abusive ex-partners, the option to intervene and or control where women and children reside. So there's two things to unpack from that second statement. The first thing, the first statement is kind of self-explanatory. We want to take parental responsibility away from dads and give it all to the mother. The second thing was the removal of the presumption of equal shared parental responsibility to eliminate abusive ex-partners. So they're basically saying that ex-partners are abusive. Because why would they be ex-partners if they weren't abusive, right? Well, maybe the relationship didn't work out. Maybe the woman wanted out, which tends to be the case most of the time. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't opt out of a relationship if it's really toxic and really shitty. But the rate at which women are opting out of relationships compared to men, and for the reasons they're opting out for, just doesn't add up for me. So they want to remove the shared parental responsibility, and they're painting men as abusive if they're an ex-partner. And they also want to remove the option of the father to intervene and or control where women and children reside. So they want to take away the rights of a father to be able to say, hey, I don't want my child living over in another country. I don't want my child living in another state. I don't want my child living 5 hours away from me so that I have to do a 10-hour return trip to visit them once a fortnight while I pay you all this child support money and I spend the other 13 days of the fortnight working my ass off so you can go on holidays to Bali and get your nails done. That's what that means. Women affected by DV to have access to affordable and or free legal representation. Oh yeah, but not men. Now guys, some of you may not have heard of the Judicial College of Victoria. Judicial College. Let's have a look at the Judicial College. Check this baby out. Judicial College of Victoria, which is the cuckoldry state of the nation, but unfortunately they have a lot of sway in advising on government policy. So let's go to the resources here. Let's go, and any of you guys can go to this, judicialcollege.vic.edu.au. Gavin says, growing up in the 90s, I was brainwashed into thinking Orange Man bad, but now I realize how wrong I was. Yeah, it's the indoctrination runs strong in the media and the school system, that's for sure. And Jason, the working man, just hit 100 subscribers. Congratulations, brother. Go out and check out the working man on YouTube. He's been putting in the work. He's put out more videos than he has subscribers. He deserves way more, and he's always getting first to the punch with the latest news. So I appreciate the hard work you're putting in, the working man. Your name is very appropriate, and I appreciate you, brother. Right, let's go back to family violence here under these resources. Then we go to family violence bench book. Then we go to social context for family violence. We have terminology. I'm going to zoom in a bit so you guys can see better. Terminology, nature of family violence, children, men, women. Wait, what? Specific considerations for diverse. I just feel like there's a particular category missing here. There doesn't seem to be any mention of women and how they come into play. Let's have a look at this. Let's dig deeper, shall we? We've got men's use of violence towards family members. Oh, that sounds kind of nasty. Men's behavior change program, the preferred approach. Really? Unhelpful and unsafe approaches to men's use of family violence. Judicial responses. Responding to men who claim to be victims of family violence. Right. Let's dig into this. While men can be victims of family violence, they're more likely to be harmed by a stranger than a family member. So what? They still deserve compassion and care. The following sections look at things judicial officers should bear in mind and some of the questions they can ask when assessing a situation in which a man claims to be a victim of family violence. This sounds sinister. The research, evidence, and experience of family violence professionals, aka professional feminists, unambiguously demonstrate that relatively few men in heterosexual relationships are solely victims of IPV. The majority of women who use some form of violence towards their partner have been subjected to worse violence by that man before or on the same occasion. So even if women subject a man to violence, they're more of a victim than he is. So therefore, they need more priority. Chris says, love your work, brother. All the best. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Often men who are genuinely victims of family violence experience the violence from a same-sex partner, carer, or a male relative. Never from a woman. Doesn't happen from a woman. Doesn't happen from a woman. By the way, Red Baboon, I'm going to be putting the link to Jason's YouTube channel in the chat, guys, so you'll be able to click on that and go to that, and I'll also put it in the description below. Let's quickly bring that up. The working man. Hey, Hammerhand, there we go. You know what, guys? I'll drop it in the chat. I'll drop it in the chat, and I will put it in the description below. I'll keep going with this. Sorry about the interruption there. Here we go. Men who are the principal users of family violence often try to present as a victim or the victim of violence. Sometimes they succeed in convincing themselves, police, and others. Many men try to avoid responsibility for seeking to justify it directly or indirectly, or to blame their partner, perhaps for provoking an attack or giving him no way out, quote unquote. Many men try to make account of the situation seem more believable or credible by portraying their partner as being hysterical, irrational, and a danger to themselves, or even mentally ill, even if they are. While they present as calm, charming, eloquent, and in control, which if a man has high testosterone levels and isn't a estrogen-riddled simp, he will be calm, charming, eloquent, and in control, generally speaking. Many men claim injuries such as scratch or bite marks inflicted on them by their partner in self-defense as evidence of their victimization. Self-defense actions can also be presented as tit-for-tat fighting, perhaps by saying that she gives as good as she gets. So what this is saying to you is, if you've got scratches and bites, well, that's just because you actually she retaliated against you being violent towards her. Now, here we go. This is really insidious. Really insidious. It is important to remember that people experiencing fear or terror will sometimes make bad decisions which might add to their portrayal as being hysterical or out of control. Women, if they feel safe enough, may undertake small acts of retaliation, which can be construed as evidence of a pattern of violence on their part. So if women feel emboldened or safe enough, and I'm going to say emboldened enough, to attack men, well, apparently men use that against them as a pattern of violence, as evidence of a pattern of violence. Interesting. Apparently Trump and the First Lady have contracted COVID. Well, Trump's been taking hydroxychloroquine, so it's going to be interesting to see if it has any effects on him, or if the virtues of hydroxychloroquine have actually just been self-evident. Establishing whether a man is a victim. There are a number of questions a judicial officer can consider when asking when a man can consider asking when a man presents as an affected family member, even in a police application, including, have you ever been violent towards your partner? Were you at fault in any way in causing her violence, even if you make her upset? Did you taunt her? Did you provoke her into causing her violence? This question serves two purposes. First, to assess whether he did anything that caused her to act in self-defense or to retaliate. Yeah, so if he was pissing her off by teasing her or, putting shit on her, that could be not only deemed to be emotional abuse on his part, but she is absolved of all use of violence because she's just retaliating against that emotional abuse, even if she's the abuser. Second, people who are genuinely the victims often excuse the perpetrator to some degree and blame themselves for the violence. So what that's saying is that if a woman is saying, hey, look, full disclosure, I was the one who was violent, what they're claiming by way of this statement is that the women are blaming themselves for the man's violence. So they're taking the rap for the man who was violent. So a woman can't even take accountability for her own violence without it being the man's fault. Are you afraid of her? What are you afraid that she might do? If a man does not feel significant levels of fear, then this raises questions about his victim status. So if she's violent towards him and always hurting him, but he's not fearful, but he's just done with it, does that make it okay then? He's not a victim if he's not afraid. And how can he be afraid if she's small and he's big, right? This is the insidious language. Aussie MGTOW Bear says, it's BS. Would they ask women these questions? Makes me furious. They would not ask these questions at all. They would not do it. They simply wouldn't do it. And Constable Bravo says the Duluth model is based on a lie that the female researcher used in her research. She admitted to this. Yes, Ellen Pence, she did admit to the lie. I have the book. I have all the evidence. Describe exactly what she did to you. So they're trying to trip you up on your story. Describe the frequency and any patterns of the violence. So if it's just happened the one time and there's no pattern, then, well, hey, just look, if it happens again, call us. And don't call us. Just call us if that happens again. And what has held you back from seeking help earlier or trying to escape the situation? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact it's my fucking house and I don't want to leave. Maybe it's the fact that I'm afraid that I might lose my kids because of these feminist laws. People who are truly victims might have felt too frightened to seek help earlier. They may have lacked access to money, resources, information, and support to leave. They may have felt trapped. Note, they may feel ashamed. And in addition to the responses to the questions above, in addition to that, judicial officers might also wish to consider the following questions and issues. A, has the man had any history of criminal behavior or allegations of such behavior, particularly involving violence? So if the woman's made multiple false allegations, that can then be used against them as a pattern of abusive behavior, even if it's all false. Even if it's all false, it can still be used against him. Has the man had any intervention orders taken out against him in the past, even if they were based on false allegations? If he has, that goes against him. Is there evidence of the man using controlling attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors? Well, you can't prove it, so I guess we're going to have to take her word for it, right? Or having rigid attitudes towards gender roles. What does that even mean? This is just so easily manipulated that it is completely ridiculous at the absolute highest level, by the way. I'm just going to take that away. I'm going to, because I got something for you here. If the accused woman has attended court, has she ever felt the need to apply for an intervention order? Has she ever felt the need? Does the woman say that she was defending herself? Or is there any other evidence to suggest that that was the case? No, she just needs to say that she was defending herself because no evidence required, because vagina. If in any doubt about whether the man is the victim or the sole victim, judicial officers can refer the man to the men's referral service, who can assess the situation further and make appropriate referrals. Note that the men's referral service will not provide reports to the court. Let's have a look at the men's referral service, shall we? See what the men's referral service is all about. First entry on the page, NTV, no to violence. Right? Men's referral service. Telephone counsel information and referral service for men who are using controlling behavior towards a partner or family member. Let's go to NTV, number one result for the men's referral service. No to Violence works with men who use family violence in the sector that supports them to change their abusive and violent behavior. Just saying. By the way, thank you for that super chat, Simon Reed. I appreciate it, brother. Guilty until proven innocent, indeed. Indeed, my friends, indeed. Now, this last bit here, now that you've seen the Duluth model, the most pervasive form of violence experienced by women in Australia, and some of you guys have seen this before, but I'm going to keep hammering this home because you need to know this. It's violence perpetrated by a male intimate partner, commonly referred to as domestic violence. So violence perpetrated by a male intimate partner is referred to as domestic violence as far as the Australian Parliament is concerned. So look for Duluth, shall we? Here we go. Perpetrator programs, which of course is the men's referral service, which is where victims of domestic violence can go to be told that they're perpetrators. There are two main approaches. One of them is a psychoeducational approach, the most common approach, and usually employing a feminist perspective of domestic violence that places the responsibility for the violence with the perpetrator and highlights the contribution of patriarchal gender relations in contributing to DV by explicitly and implicitly sanctioning men's use of power and control over women. The Duluth approach typically employs a feminist psychoeducational approach. Let's go here. Was it established in Duluth, Minnesota as the Duluth model? Here we go. It's like all through here. You can just keep searching, keep searching. And in fact, Duluth model website. Let's click there. Check this out. Wouldn't you know it? That was the website I went to before. You know, the one with the wheels, where you can download the wheels. Go to the power and control wheel that I had up before. Remember that one? Yeah. The same website. The same one that does creating a process of change for men who batter. Oh, equality wheel. Yeah, piss off. It's just all lies, guys. All of it is lies. And in fact, I know we talk a lot about the woman who actually admitted that it was all a lie. I'm going to share with you a snippet of that book that proves the lie. This book is called Coordinating Community Responses to Domestic Violence, Lessons from Duluth and Beyond. Let's go here. Let's do this. Right? So I think it's page like 27 or something. Here we go. The Duluth model has been hailed an organizer's miracle. The DAIP staff who present workshops said, how did you get the police to do this? Why did the prosecutors agree to this? How do you get past the secrecy of every agency? How did you have a coordinating council and who ran it? How did you involve judges? That's because they've rigged the system, man, I'm telling you. But this is the interesting bit, right? The power and control wheel, which was originally developed by battered women attending women's groups, was originally a description of typical behaviors accompanying the violence. In effect, it said, when he is violent, he gets power and control. Somewhere early in our organizing efforts, however, we changed the message to he is violent in order to get power and control. The difference is not semantic, it is ideological. Here we go. Speaking for myself, I found that many of the men I interviewed did not seem to articulate a desire for power over their partner, although I relentlessly took every opportunity to point out to men in the groups that they were so motivated and merely in denial. The fact that few men ever articulated such a desire went unnoticed by myself and many of our co-workers. Eventually, we realized that we were finding what we'd already predetermined to find. The DAIP were interpreting what men seem to expect or feel entitled to it as a desire. When we had to start explaining women's violence towards their partners, lesbian violence, and the violence of men who did not like what they were doing, we were brought back to our original undeveloped thinking that the violence is rooted in how social relationships and the rights people feel entitled to within them are socially, not privately constructed. And what else was really, really fascinating? While it is clear that every community can find the case of the woman who lied, all women are suspect. For more than a decade, the DAIP and other shelter advocates reacted to this constant undercurrent of women are liars by arguing that women are saints. In many ways, we turned a blind eye to some women's use of violence, their drug use and alcoholism, and their often harsh and violent treatment of their children. There did not seem to be a way to acknowledge these problems and still argue that this was a deeply gendered issue and that women were being subjected to repeated acts of intimidation and coercion, very different from what men were experiencing as a group within marriages. Right? Very, very interesting. Now, there was something. Here we go. By determining that the need for power or desire for power was the motivating force behind battering, we created a conceptual framework that in fact did not fit the lived experience of many of the men and women we were working with. Like those we were criticizing, we reduced our analysis to a psychological universal truism. The DAIP staff, like the therapist insisting it was an anger control problem, or the judge wanting to see it as an alcohol problem, or the defense attorney arguing that it was a defective wife problem, remained undaunted by the difference in our theory and the actual experiences of those we were working with. We all engaged in ideological practices and claimed them to be neutral observations. What do you think of that, guys? Does that sound like honesty and integrity to you? Does that sound like zero hypocrisy to you? Sounds like 100% hypocrisy to me. I would love to get your respectful thoughts in the comments below, what you think about this video. Please share this video with as many men as you can. Give it a thumbs up. I'm also going to drop a link to almost all of these links in the description below. I won't be able to share that book because that is my own private book that I paid for. It cost me 75 Australian dollars. So please don't go out and buy it. Just let me share it with you for free. And FUBAR, F-U-B-A-R, means fucked up beyond all recognition. That's what that means. Guys, I'm out of here. I got to go get some sleep before work. I appreciate you. If you would like to donate to this channel, feel free to super chat as always. Thank you to all of the gentlemen who dropped a super chat before. Aussie MGTOW Bear, sorry, I missed that as well, says, I don't want to play anymore. I totally understand, brother. This is why guys are opting out of marriage and cohabiting relationships where it can be proven that they're living together. Now, I do have a book that I am working on, and I know how much you guys want me to share about that. But if I share it, someone else is going to beat me to the punch, and I don't want that to happen. So for that reason, I'm just going to keep it on the DL, and I'm going to keep working on it. And when it's ready to come out, I promise you guys will be the first to hear about it. And guys, also, if you do want to become a member of my channel, like my faithful brother over here, Aussie MGTOW Bear, and many others that will then get your own special little avatar, feel free to head to my YouTube channel and click the join button next to where it says subscribe. $3.99 and $5.99 a month, depending on whether you want to get access to the members-only live chats or the members-only streams, which I will be starting very shortly. Thank you, Skupun, who says, and not a moment too soon. Skupun, Duluth model has always been underpinned by 90s feminist ideology, founded on women's only accounts of violence, no science. Well, there is a science, but it's pseudoscience, which is not actually science. It's just more feminist language twisting. Guys, I'm out of here. I appreciate you all. Like I said, you want to donate, you can always do so by Super Chat, by PayPal, by crypto. Links in the description. If you want to help support this channel without laying down a cent and you're still on Chrome browser or any other browser, you're looking for a change, head on over to sydneymgtow.com/Brave. Download the Brave browser. It's basically like Google Chrome, but without all of the Google privacy interference on their part. Thank you, guys. Love you all. Peace.